Bugs, am I right? And I'm not talking about them dang insect types. So today, we're coming to you with a review about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The first point I'd like to cover today is about the bugs, because it's going to be the main complaint of most of the fan base. When it first came out, it was a bit rough. It still is. I mean, they haven't done much to patch them out. However, they don't kill the game. So I just want to get that out of the way first. Next is the box system. So you need to pay attention when they give these instructions, because when I was first playing, for the first month and a half of my playthrough, I was working on the assumption that they had taken away the ability to move a single Pokemon at a time without opening up the menu for the things you can do with them, like change their items or release them. But in actuality, all you have to do is press the minus button, and then you can actually move the box cursor horizontally as well, and then you drag down the cursor to cover the rest of them, and then you can move them in batches. But other than that, I like what they've done with the box system. My only other gripe actually would be moving items. So you can't move them as easily as you do with Pokemon. Unfortunately, you have to go to the Pokemon and select it normally, and then it actually gives you two options to do with the item. There's put it away in the box, and there is choosing to swap it with another Pokemon. It's not fast movement. I would have liked if the same options you have with the Pokemon extended to the items. But the box is beautiful, the game is beautiful, and we have many more touch points to cover. Next is the battle system. So unfortunately, in the options menu, they removed the ability to turn off the battle scenes. That would be when an ability would light up to say that, hey, this ability is active right now, or when your Pokemon would do a move animation. Unfortunately, you always have to sit through all of that, which can hurt your EV training experience. Also, timer in 1v1 battles against other real people is still short, which can be a downside. However, because they removed a lot of the stall-y options and have limited what's left of those stall options, games are faster naturally, and you very rarely end up hitting the max time, even in some of the longer games. And I love the limited learn sets. They've taken away a lot of options in your move sets, and the problem that started to occur was that no matter the Pokemon, there would be staple moves, such as taking Scald on a water type, whether it's offensive or defensive, mainly defensive. Taking Toxic on any bulky Pokemon, because pretty much any Pokemon could learn Toxic, and because there are no move tutors, you can't teach a Pokemon that wouldn't normally learn knockoff or anything to that regard, really. And so let me get into the story paths. Initially, I thought that what they were suggesting was you go into the story and you choose which path you complete, and then at the end of that path, they go, this is the treasure you've learned along the way by completing that path, and it was going to be specific to each path. What ended up happening was not the case, but mind you, it is still a rich story, and they do justify having all the paths matter. My least favorite path was Operation Starfall, and the main NPC you accompany on this journey is Penny. Now, Penny comes across as shy, introverted. She doesn't really like being around people or conversing. When your tasks are being done, she just wants to get in and get out. What's great about this path, though, as predictable as it is, the bosses you encounter are so endearing. The story they had to tell is also great, and you have a companion throughout this whole journey, and it is the sweetest character you will ever come across of any of the Pokemon NPCs, and to this day, this person is my favorite. I will not spoil the surprise. Just be ready to have the best experience with this NPC. My middle of the road path was Nemona and the Gym League Association. The problem I had with this was that the circuit itself was a bit vanilla. Even though you got to choose the order in which you fought the gym leaders, they were leveled to a point where you could have easily been over leveled by the time you encountered them, or under leveled if you were doing strictly gym challenges and not really doing anything on the side like catching Pokemon or completing or making progress in any of the other paths. And the challenges, while they were fun, a lot of them were well detailed, but a couple of them, and I would say more toward the generic end, as in there's a route you could take when it comes to completing the gym badges, and you can tell by the levels at which they are when you meet them, when you first meet them. So by the end of that journey, which would be about the 7th or 8th gym, it seems like they lost their steam a bit. But the gym leaders, you remember all of them. They all leave an impression on you. And it is great that you have to complete challenges in order to earn the chance to fight the gym leaders. Of course, you have the opportunity in most of the gyms to battle a certain number of gym trainers to make your way to the leader, but it's usually not the case. You can end up skipping the trainers entirely in most of the paths and simply completing the task the vanilla way. And of course, my second favorite NPC of all time is the star of this path, and you know her well as Nemona. She is the third NPC you meet in the entire game, and she is no less adorable, no less feisty throughout any point of the game. She has an addiction to Pokemon battling that is infectious. Every time you challenge her, it's like facing one of your friends who's always like, I just made this new team, I want to try them out against you. And then you beat them, or you lose to them, and they go, all right, now I want to try this other team. And then someone has to step in her way and say, give this person some time to breathe. You'll have other opportunities to battle them. And then, depending on where your slant is, I personally like battling. I would often end up saying, no, I want to go again. But the NPC already speaks up for you and says, give them a break. And I'm like, next time, Nemona, I got you. And then finally, we get to the Titan path. The star of this path is, and I kid you not, the main character of this story. Do not trick yourself into thinking that you are the main character of this story. No, this star, his name is Arvin, is the main character of the entire game. He's a chef, actually, and he is the son of whichever professor matches the game you play. So Professor Sada for Scarlet or Professor Toro for Violet. And what you're doing for him is you're going around and defeating Titans for the goal of collecting these items called the Urban Mystica. I'm not going to spoil why you're doing that, but just know this is, in my opinion, the best path of them all. And usually, after your first couple of Titans, in my experience, most of the other players have been like, all right, we're completing this Titan path first. Just look forward to thinking, even if you're going to take the balanced approach to the paths, just look forward to that changing in a heartbeat. This guy, he's not much of a people person either, but he's not as antisocial as Penny. It's more like he's a bit of an outcast and it's hard to get along with him, but he's a loving guy once you get to know him, and he simply has a hard outer shell. And next, I want to talk about the sandwich system. This is a new addition to the mainline Pokemon games. We've had different iterations throughout the history of the franchise. We've had cubes in Gen 3, Poffin making in Gen 4. When it was Pokeblocks, you would simply throw berries into a machine and it would toss out whichever block was geared toward the flavor that the majority of the berries would make. And then when it came to Generation 4, which is Diamond, Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Platinum, you would get Poffin making. But the Poffins would only be in the Sinnoh region, so that would be Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. And what you do in this situation is you also throw those berries in, however, you stir it. And depending on how quickly you stir it, how long you keep your rhythm, it produces a Poffin of a certain flavor, but also a certain texture, in that if you stir it too slowly, it could end up burning, and then it's no good. And then for a little while, they sort of laid off of it, and then they brought it back, I would say in Generation 8, to my recollection, with Sword and Shield in the Galar region. They brought it in the form of curry making. And what they were doing to innovate this food making process is add a bunch of ingredients. It was no longer restricted to berries. It was a bunch of regular foods, like, I don't know, strawberries, peppers, stuff like that. And they would produce, they were more so geared toward collecting different recipes, and they healed up your Pokemon's health to full and also helped with friendship. But other than that, it didn't really affect your gameplay in the way that it would in this current generation, Scarlet and Violet. Here we have sandwich making. So here's the thing about sandwich making though. The perspective can trick you. So what you do in this is you take the ingredient portion of it and you actually put them onto the sandwich yourself. Whereas in the other systems, you kind of threw it into the abyss. And then it came out with something. But yeah, with the sandwiches, you build the sandwich yourself. You have to pay attention to how you're balancing the ingredients, the shapes of the ingredients. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether the sandwich comes out whole, in the sense of the second slice of bread landing on top. It can fall off the sandwich. All that matters is that all the ingredients make it to the plate, and preferably onto that first slice of bread. If they touch the picnic table, you will end up losing that ingredient. And every ingredient has its own amount of points that it adds to the end result. And the end result is mainly 3 options. Actually, there's a 4th option. There are 4 results in total. There is the egg power that boosts the likelihood of you producing a Pokemon egg between 2 Pokemon of the same egg group in your party. There is the catching power that boosts your chance of catching a Pokemon of a certain type. And these all have levels. I believe the max level is maybe level 3, but even level 1 is extremely effective. And the main result that you like to find, when, in my personal opinion, is encounter power. And in encounter power, you have a higher chance of running into whatever type the encounter power gives you. So if you get, say, encounter power dark, and you go to an area like the Glaciado Mountain, then you will have a higher chance of running into a Sneasel or a Weavile than any of the other Pokemon in that environment. And when you're EV training, that could be great for you, because if you're training speed, you put on a power anklet and you just go in there. You run into them a lot for a time limit of 30 minutes. That's when the sandwich power wears off. And whenever you try to add on to your powers by eating a second sandwich, it will first tell you that if you eat this second sandwich while there's still leftover time in the first sandwich, it will switch powers. You don't get to stack them. There are also other options. There's ice cream, other food options. You just have to find the different restaurants around the region. There's so many options in this region for the things you're trying to accomplish. For instance, EV training, what you had to do in previous generations is go to a battle facility, which would be at the end of the game, and you keep on battling that facility to earn some points, which would be the currency of that particular facility. And then you would spend those points to buy a power item, like a power item or a macho brace, that kind of thing. Or even the vitamins. In this generation, they offer it to you the minute you walk in the door. They're like, hey, you want to EV train your Pokemon so that you're going through the story with EV trained Pokemon? I got you. You drop a hefty sum because they are the most expensive items in the game for good reason. They do want you to fight alongside your in-game team for as long as possible before you specialize them and make them outpace, because most of the time you're going to be over leveled for most of the encounters you find, especially when it comes to trainers. So when you're over leveled plus fully EV trained, it can be incredibly one-sided. The other person might as well not even exist. You're just dipping into the void's wallet. And so let me get back to the subject of NPCs for a moment. Like I was trying to say earlier, they all have distinct personalities, the important ones anyway. You'll be able to remember them all by name. The gym leaders, Nemona, Director Clavel, all the teachers actually. And mind you, they don't really tell you right out the bat that you can attend classes and actually spend time with the teachers and build up a rapport with them and gain education in whatever area they're teaching. However, if you do take that time, if you stop by the academy, and they'll alert you, just like they alert you when Pokemon outbreaks are coming, you'll get a taste of these teachers' personalities, the way they approach their subjects, and no spoilers, but this knowledge about them may or may not come in handy later on in the game. But just keep it in mind and experience some of them. So on to the open world. Man, did they nail it this time around. They really proved that Sword and Shield were merely the testing grounds for this concept. Because in this, they have you use one ride Pokemon. They have Tera crystals littered across the open world, in addition to being able to collect them from Tera raids. And the quick battle system in collecting materials and experience, perfection. Would not change a thing. So with the ride Pokemon, what they did this time around was they paired you up with the box art legend. In Scarlet, that is going to be Koraidon, the prehistoric dragon. And then in Violet, it's going to be Miraidon, the futuristic motorcycle dragon. And what they do throughout this game is basically they're your replacement for running across the map without tiring. And then as you progress through the story, they will gain other abilities to conquer new heights. However, you have multiple paths toward getting to the same destination. The only true obstacle in your way is going to be the level of the Pokemon you encounter along the way. They can deter you quite a bit, because if you are underleveled and those Pokemon run at you, you're most likely in for a bad time. But I would like to touch on Pokemon encounters for a second. So originally in Sword and Shield, they had you run across a Pokemon, and once you got its attention, it would automatically attack you. And then we move into Pokemon Legends Arceus, and we get Pokemon with different temperaments. Even the same species of Pokemon can have a different attitude toward you. Sometimes one of them can be aggressive, the other can be curious or friendly. In this generation, Scarlet and Violet, they take that approach and expand upon it, because they're incorporated into the environment as they would naturally act. For instance, they have a dex entry, and I love to bring this up. They have a dex entry about Bergmite riding on the backs of Avalugs in the water. And when you're swimming, yes, you come across fish type Pokemon, and you also have Wingull flying above you, as well as a couple other birds that I won't spoil for you, but they're in here. And then you'll have this random group of Bergmite around this Avalug, just floating around, chilling, doing their own thing. Next we have the Tera crystals, or rather the crystal shards. You can find these by simply roaming around on the map. They will be part of your sparkly items, the sparkles that you find in the ground that aren't Pokeballs. And you'll have two different versions of the regular items, such as usable items and TMs. TMs will glow yellow, usable items will glow red. And then among the sparkles, you'll be able to find things like berries, Tera shards, all kinds of little goodies. In addition to that, the raid battles are on point. You might have heard that you can all battle simultaneously. You no longer have to wait for your allies to make a move. The Pokemon that you're fighting will wait until you make your move for it to move, at least when it comes to moving against you. It'll still move against your opponents normally. It'll retaliate whenever they attack. The issues you may come across goes back to the bugs. Sometimes you'll be stuck in the decision-making process. They won't let you move around between the options of battling or cheering or trying to heal or trying to run. But there are so many rewards to raid battles that at the end of the day, if you are able to overcome those obstacles, it will very much be worth it. Not to mention that they have upheld being able to join raids online or broadcast your own raids online to ask for help. And then there are the quick battles. So instead of challenging each Pokemon one-on-one and going through the whole process of choosing which move to use, having to watch all the animations, they've foregone all of that in the form of clicking a button, sending your Pokemon out, and it'll target the first wild Pokemon it finds, as long as they're not shiny. So you shiny hunters out there, you don't have to worry about accidentally knocking out one of those. Heck, if your Pokemon ends up going out and slaughtering every Pokemon in the area, and you notice there's left one alive, you might want to check that Pokemon out. Could be a shiny. And as a reward for each quick battle, it is important to note that one of the downsides is that you gain less experience. I think a third of the experience you would from battling normally. However, if you're out collecting materials to make TMs, or some of these materials are, well, actually all these materials are sellable if you have a surplus of them and you simply don't feel like making the TMs that require them as ingredients. And so you can find that very easy. And they're all set too. So for instance, I like to use the Teddiursa Ursaring example. I forget exactly what it drops, but Teddiursa, let's say it drops a Teddiursa Claw upon its defeat. If you fight an Ursaring, you will not get an Ursaring Claw drop. You'll get 2 or 3 Teddiursa Claw drops. So they're consistent in that regard. You don't have to worry about, well, dang, I'm battling all these Teddiursa, but then there's that one Ursaring among them. I'm not going to get all the items I need. I'm going to have to find another bunch of Teddiursa somewhere else. Nope. Ursaring's there to help you out too. And those are my thoughts on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I would recommend picking it up for yourself if you're a Pokemon fan and you're looking for something to play in the mainline series. And if you want some more Pokemon content, check out this video that's on screen now.